Just a heads up, this episode was recorded in March of 2021, and there are a couple things that might be a little dated. I think, like all great conversations, there are a lot of great things that we talked about that are still relevant today for us to be talking about and learning about. So please enjoy the episode.
Feels so good being on the wall. It's like you're like there are certain moves where, like, you know, I was on slab climb and both my toes were pointed like the opposite directions and stuff, which, like, I guess is bad technique, but whatever. Check it out.
Hi, I'm Alexa Forster. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a trans woman based out of Dallas, Texas, and I've been climbing since the beginning of 2019, and I absolutely love it. I am so excited to be partnering with Mario on the Sins and Suffers podcast to be doing this LGBTQ takeover series, where I get to talk to some amazing climbers who were also part of the queer community. So thank you again, Mario, for allowing me to talk to all of these just beautiful and amazing queer climbers. I never would have had this opportunity, and I am just so excited. Samuel Crossley is a filmmaker, photographer, and a climber. He's a contributor to National Geographic Adventure. He's worked on multiple climbing films and documentaries, including Free Solo. And that's actually how I first heard about Sam. I remember after seeing Free Solo in the theaters and going home, and I do what I always do. I go straight to IMDb, and I start to look up all of the other crew members. And then I started trying to find them on Instagram. And as soon as I found Sam's page on Instagram, I remember just being like so excited because I saw that he is also a part of the LGBTQ community. And that just made me feel really hopeful and excited to see that there's other creatives that are queer that are taking a part in this creative climbing world for creating media and for creating photography and creating films. Just made me so excited. And to one day, you know, get to talk to them about, you know, what their process is like. And that's what I finally got to do. So please be sure to go follow, subscribe, like everything that you do on social media to get more of the amazing Sins and Suffers content. And now, a quick trigger warning, things are about to get really gay. So if you're homophobic, feel free to stop listening. Or I ask you to maybe open your mind and just listen, and maybe you'll learn something and have a new perspective on things. So without further ado, enjoy the episode. Check it out. Hi, everyone. My name is Alexa Forster. I use she, her pronouns, and I am your temporary host for Sins and Suffers for the LGBTQ takeover episodes. And I am so grateful to be joined by Samuel Crossley, filmmaker and photographer. How are you doing today, Sam?
I'm doing well. Thanks for inviting me on the show. I use he, him pronouns.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's just go right into it. So yeah, I've been a fan of yours since Free Solo, but we'll come back around to that later. So yeah, let's just start from the beginning of your climbing history. What got you started in climbing?
What got me started on climbing? Well, I wanted to stay fit. I had just gotten into college and I played team sports all my life. And so I was looking for a way to kind of continue that a little bit into my adulthood. And so I tried weightlifting and running, and those were just so boring. I couldn't motivate to do them. And luckily, like while doing this search, I decided I'd try climbing at a climbing gym because there are a bunch of climbing gyms in San Francisco. And I tried it. And I think a lot of people share this experience when they climb the first time, where it's just so much fun and it's so much hard work, but you feel kind of trapped and not trapped, but you feel in the moment. And when I got to the top of the wall the first time, I was out of breath and I had used my body and I was kind of tired and exhausted because I had no technique. But it was so fun, and so I kept on coming back and I tried a different climbing gym every time. And the day passes were so expensive that after I had tried the three gyms, I decided to get a membership. And so that kind of is when I got hooked in the freshman year of college.
That's really cool. It's yeah, it's interesting you said like a lot of people have kind of a similar story, and mine was yeah, a very similar thing. It was like actually first started climbing. Mine was January 1st of 2019.
Oh, pretty
So I
recently
was like
then.
at a friend's house. Yeah, pretty recently. So like just a little over 2 years now. And I was over at my friend's place, and she was like, "Hey," like because I just stayed over after New Year's, and she's like, "Hey, do you want to go rock climbing?" And I was like, "You know what? It's a new year. I should try something new." And very similar thing. Like I got on the wall and got to the top and just felt this like amazing sense of accomplishment after climbing this route, which I had never thought. Like if I'd asked myself like 5 years ago, do you see yourself rock climbing ever in the future? I would have said, hell no. That sounds like the craziest thing in the world. Why would I put myself on top of a wall? This doesn't make any sense. But no, I just felt so accomplished and really proud of myself for sending that V0 and just getting to the top. And yeah, I was instantly hooked and wanted to, push myself harder to see if I could get the next V1 route or
Yeah,
whatever it was.
I love how that's
Um,
structured, like a V0, V1, V2. Like the first time
mhm.
you get to a gym, you're like, "Oh, I want to get better," like instantly. And you know exactly
Yeah,
how. It's so easy.
instantly.
And then you see someone do a V6,
Yeah.
you're like, "I'm never going to do that in my lifetime." And then eventually maybe you do.
Hmm.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but like, there's something else you said about like you were actually like present or like a meditative feel, because I feel like yeah, like that's like one of the things I felt too was just like instantly present in that
Yeah.
moment. It was so interesting because I never felt it. Like I guess like maybe I felt it a little bit sometimes with running, but most of the time that was just like you're kind of zoned out. But with climbing, it's like you're like zoned
Hmm.
in and so focused on every single moment, every single move that you can't really think about anything
Yeah,
else.
exactly. Yeah, it's like it's the flow state, essentially what you're talking about. And I've experienced the flow state before, but it wasn't in the way that climbing offered it, because it's climbing is very slow and methodical and technique based, and so you're really focused on doing everything super well. Whereas in the past, like when I was young, I did competitive swimming because that was just the thing to do where I grew up. And I just remember when I got to high school, freshman year, I was on the swim team, and I just gave it up because I was so tired of swimming laps, because my mind would just go elsewhere and I'd think of all the things I'd want to be doing instead of swimming back and forth in a pool. And so I realized it wasn't for me, so I quit. And I guess it really wasn't until I found climbing about 4 years later in college that I found that flow state again, but it was different in that I wasn't, using my body and then my mind was elsewhere. Everything was working at the same time. And I really, really liked that. And I love the problem solving aspect of climbing, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like you look at something, and even if you think you can't do it, if you just try, you can kind of sort of like start to unlock it. And that's something that I really liked as well, is just like going and trying something that I didn't know I could do, but I just wanted to try it. And then the feeling
Yeah.
of doing it is amazing. You feel so accomplished, even though all you did was move like 10 feet up if you're bouldering, you know. But it's so
Mm-hmm.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess that's a good question. What kind of climber are you? Do you prefer top rope or lead or bouldering? Which one's
Yeah,
your favorite?
definitely. I mean, the disciplines of climbing each have their own appeal to me. I really like bouldering for two reasons. There's kind of two types of bouldering for me. There's the bouldering at the gym alone and kind of just like in college, I would just escape to the gym for like an hour and a half, and I'd get my fix of the workout. But then there's also the flip side of like when I'm in Yosemite and we go bouldering, like there's usually like four or five people, and it's this really fun social environment where everyone's talking and having a good time. It's totally different than being like on the side of El Cap where you're with like one or two other people. Um, And so I really like the social aspects of bouldering, but then also just like the discipline of honing in and trying to practice your climbing. I don't, I don't call myself a boulderer. I think of it as kind of like a discipline that I'm not into, but I have a lot of respect for people that are into it. I definitely more consider myself a rope climber. And I've done a lot of trad climbing. I've done a lot of sport climbing, leading, but I think nowadays I'm most interested actually in top roping. The last year I haven't really climbed all that much, just because of COVID, and it's been complicated. And now I live in Boulder now, and the winters are really cold here with a lot of snow. And I skied a lot
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger, and so the past year I've kind of been focused on skiing. And when COVID hit, climbing kind of people were like not okay climbing, and I was in that boat where I didn't feel comfortable going out to a crag, and because there's not a lot known about COVID at the time, in terms of like how it spread. And so essentially nobody was climbing for a month, and I joined that. And so I started mountain biking. So the past year I got really into mountain biking and then road biking and skiing. And just now I'm feeling comfortable with like everyone getting vaccinated. And like about a week ago, I went into the gym for the first time in almost like a year. Because when COVID
Oh,
started, we
wow.
came back from a climbing trip. And so I was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I just came back from a climbing trip. I'm okay kind of taking a month off. And then I kind of went from there. And so right now I'm like, I'm not strong. I have no idea what my mental game is like. I've shot photos during COVID where I've wrapped in, and like I'm totally fine with the fear of heights and like the rope management. That's all good. But I am a little bit slow, I've noticed, in like transitioning and stuff, from anchors and stuff. I'm just like, because it is something that you just have to keep practicing. Um, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
fine going slow because it's such a delicate technical risk analysis where of course if you mess up you can get severely hurt. So I'm kind of like I'm
Yeah.
like really excited to get back into climbing, and I think I'm most interested in top roping right now, and then seeing how that progresses. And once I feel like I can actually do interesting things on top ropes, then I'll start leading again, and taking it from there. But yeah, my boyfriend climbs a little bit more right now than I do. Um, and so I'm looking forward to him being a rope gun and me just like enjoying the
Yes.
pure movement of climbing and getting back into it. Yeah,
Yes, gotta keep that relationship
definitely.
strong.
Yeah, our relationship started at a climbing festival. So it's like it kind of anchors us, which is lovely. Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool though. Yeah, I definitely feel myself more as a rope climber as well. Um and it's yeah, just like you said, like you any amount of time that you take off, anytime like you go past like oh, I would say anytime you go past like a week from getting on the wall, you're like gonna lose a little bit of the progress that you
Yeah.
made. So yeah, it's interesting. Like it's I'm glad that you brought up COVID because that wasn't even on my list to talk about like coming back after COVID and being gone for so long. And so I'm in Texas, and they shut everything down, in March of last year, and then they everything started to open back up in Texas. Like last May, they were able to open gyms back up, and I went, like from March until May of like no climbing, and for me, I got into climbing, and it was one of the most, I would say, important activities that I had, like outside of like going to a therapist. Like really, for me, climbing has enabled me to, like you said, meditate on the wall, and it allows me to go climb and just escape for a short amount of time to clear my head from any emotions or whatever's going on in my life and focus on just this one thing and relax myself and be able to come back to those feelings or those emotions or those issues that I'm having in my life at the time. And so that was for me, um, like 1 year into my transition or whatever, like being able to like have this, experience to turn to was so beneficial for me. And so whenever like COVID hit, it was just like devastating for me that I lost this activity that was so important to me. So when I had the ability to go back to the gym in May, I was just like
they're enforcing a very strict, policy of, the amount of people that can be in the gym was like at 25% when it started. So it was very few people. I felt safer there, having to wear a mask and like washing my hands the whole time between climbs. Um, so yeah, I jumped at the opportunity to get back in the gym because sadly the gym is all I've known so far. But I'm excited to get to climb outside next month. I'm going to Horseshoe Canyon, I believe is the name, in Arkansas. So I'm excited to finally get out there. And I found the same thing whenever I like, say for example, I got lead certified this last summer in the gym. And then I don't go like a week, or say I go a month without lead climbing and I start lead climbing again, it's like starting all over. Like I'm so terrified to go, higher and higher and start clipping, and I look down and I'm just like, oh my goodness, just like all this like rush of anxiety kind of like overcomes you, and it's just kind of terrifying. Yeah. But yeah, I guess that kind of leads into my question of like why, so what brings you back to climbing? Why do you climb?
That's a great question. Why do I climb? I mean, I kind of talked about how I got into it, and right now I'm kind of feeling that same draw, where like skiing is very quad and calf intensive, and it's just not, and so is biking, and so my upper body just does not feel very fit, and I really miss the feeling of like okay, so my home gym I was Diablo Rock Gym in the Bay Area, and it's like one of the touchstone gyms, but it's not very well known or like heavily populated. And it's got this really cool prow that's overhanging. And I loved bouldering and then doing the prow, lead climbing. But the problem is, as you mentioned, if you go 2 weeks without, climbing, all of a sudden, like I would go back after, working on a filming trip, and I would come back and my arms would be jello, And so when I lead climb on the prow and my arms are jello, it's intense and it's frightening. And I go to clip and I realize I'm about to fall, and I'm like, this is not fun. This is scary, and it's the type of scary that I'm just like, yeah, I can work to overcome it, but I could also just like take a step back and go slower. And so right now I'm at the point where like the last time I was at a gym, all I did was climb up to V3 because I was afraid of tendon injuries or finger injuries or, skin, just like all these things. I'm like kind of like really just inching my way back into climbing because one, I miss it for all the reasons of just the health benefits, the social side. Like I haven't, like there's a lot of friends that I haven't seen because climbing provides this social experience, and the same people kind of go to the same destinations each year, kind of like a seasonal cycle of seeing people in Las Vegas and Red Rocks or Yosemite, and so I just miss my friends, and that's paired with climbing. I miss the way my body feels when I climb, but also I kind of resonate with what you were talking about, where it's an escape and it's something that helps self-esteem. It also is something that I want to get better at because it's my profession in a way. I'm not a professional climber, but it helps to be able to climb, 5'11", 5'12", when you're shooting people that are doing 5'14". So, you have like a little bit of understanding of what they're doing. And yeah, so I just want to get that side of my life kind of back into a cycle because it's not there right now. And, I've tried other sports and those were great, but there's nothing quite like climbing. So yeah, there's so many reasons why I want to get back into it. Also, I spend more time with my boyfriend outside when we're climbing because it's just so easy. You just go out climbing for a day. And so I miss that. And then also traveling to climb, once we're both vaccinated, Brian and I want to travel again to climb and visit places we couldn't, like El Pochero Chico. I still haven't been there. I want to go there. So long list of reasons why to get back into climbing.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's there's so many reasons, but that's cool to kind of hear the similarities there. And that's interesting that you said that like with COVID, it's kind of set everyone back, depending on where you are, in the country, like I'm in Texas, so I've been able to start, climbing again since last year, but some people like, just were able to get back in the gym like in the last month or so that they've, started opening up in other states. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see how people are like essentially having to start over and regain, where they left off. But I always feel like it's not as a slow as a build as it was the first time. You kind of get back to a little bit faster.
Yeah, it's like
I've
riding a
found,
bicycle.
since you kind of have like exactly, yeah, like you have the technique still. It's just like getting those muscles kind of back in shape.
Feels so
and
good being on the wall. It's like
Yeah,
it's like you're like
yeah.
there were certain moves where like I was on slab climb and both my toes were pointed like the opposite directions and stuff, which like I guess is bad
Mm-hmm.
technique, but whatever. But like it felt amazing.
That's how I
Like my
climb.
hips were opening up, and I was like, you can't do that when you ski. You can't point your skis like out towards your body. You definitely don't do that biking.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that climbing just makes me feel good doing. It's like yoga on the wall.
Yeah, essentially, yeah, that's what I've heard. Um, it's interesting. Like I've talked to a couple other people about climbing, and like initially how I viewed climbing before getting into it. I thought it was a very, masculine kind of macho sport dominated, thing. And the more that I've got into it and learned about it, is I've heard people describe it as a very um actually like feminine sport. Like very like the way you move on the wall and the technique and everything is very well controlled and almost like a dance with the
Yeah.
wall.
No, I 100%
So
agree with that.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting to like go like from like complete 180 for me, like how I see climbing and like what it takes to climb well. And I was just so fortunate when I started to have, experienced climbers kind of teaching me as I got started and what I should be doing and what I shouldn't be doing. So I was really grateful for my friends to get me some coaching tips getting started. So yeah, it's interesting to see it that way and kind of have it
Yeah, it's
transform for me.
definitely a mix. I mean, I think that when you look at like the social aspect of climbing, it's definitely, affluent, white, and pretty male dominated. But when you look
Mm-hmm.
at the actual athleticism and the activity, you're like, well, why is it like that?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that kind of leads to my next like kind of topic I was wanting to go to. So it's like, what are your thoughts on today's like climbing community slash culture? Um, and then I guess like a part two of that would be, what do you think we can do to improve our community?
Yeah, that's like I haven't really talked a whole lot about that with people, just because of COVID. I haven't been able to talk with the people I usually talk to about stuff like this. But I mean, where to go with that question? I guess I see the climbing community as kind of part of the world. Like the issues that we're seeing in the world today are definitely reflected in the microcosm of the climbing world, but I also hold a lot of hope in the climbing industry, in the climbing world, because I think that the people that are drawn to climbing are people that see those issues and truthfully do want to fix them, and they're just so big that everyone's trying to figure out how to fix them, and people are starting to fix them, but we have such a long way to go in terms of like achieving the climbing utopia that I think probably you and I see. Yeah, it's a hard question to kind of to answer, because I can talk about so many things, but also I just like don't really feel super. I guess I want to educate myself as much as possible before talking like as like I don't know, an authority on this subject, because like as an LGBTQ person, I have my own experiences within the climbing industry, but I also come from an affluent family. I'm a white male and I'm straight presenting, and so I haven't gotten much discrimination at all. It checks out. If I was different in any of those ways, then I think I would have had a totally different experience in the climbing industry. And so, in the past year, especially, I've been kind of taking more of a backseat role. Like I haven't been posting to Instagram all that much, because I'm really just doing a lot of educating myself and learning. And so it's complicated to answer that question, because like there's so much that I see that needs to change, and I honestly don't know quite how to change it. I mean, like one thing that in the past month I've kind of been interested in is exploring the possibility of just like seeing what's out there in terms of queer climbing content. And more specifically, or I guess less specifically, I think it would be kind of interesting to think about creating an LGBTQ outdoor film festival where it's not anything big. It just curates all of the films in the outdoor industry that have anything to do with the queer space, because that doesn't exist right now. And so after a long time of learning about a lot of different topics, I'm just like, well, what can I do to kind of benefit other people? And I'm like, well, I'm a filmmaker and I'm submitting to film festivals right now, and there's kind of a film festival that doesn't exist. There's a lot to talk about with that question. I'm interested in your thoughts as well. I don't want it to just be about me.
I love that idea, like a queer, like outdoor, like kind of like climbing, like centric film festival sounds amazing to me. Sign me up for that wherever the sign up is. I would
currently
love
that.
In my head. Currently in your head. Okay, perfect. Well, I'm glad that you kind of just like decided to share that with me. That's awesome. But no, I think going back to what you said, like, not knowing really what to do, but I think what the other thing you said is you've just been educating yourself. And as like a white trans woman, I think that's the same approach that I've been taking as well is just trying to educate myself the best way that I can. And, kind of taking a step back, and trying to help uplift other voices that, haven't really been able to be heard. So I think, what you're doing is like, a step in the right direction, and just like trying to educate ourselves and continually trying to uplift other voices and stuff. So that's, sounds like you're on the right path to me. But I don't know. I'm just, another white person, so I can't really say if that's right or not. But I try to, remind myself, like, even though I am a trans person, that I still have this white privilege that other, trans folks don't have in a very marginalized community. It is difficult to talk about, but it's also one of those things. It's, those difficult conversations that are going to be the most important conversations that you have.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I've found. I definitely want to, in the future, circle back with you about this kind of queer outdoor climbing film festival idea. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Definitely.
Yes, that's just gonna bookmark that in my head for later.
I'm glad you responded positively to it. Yeah, I'm excited about it, and I also have it's like such an idea in its infancy. I'm still like trying to get free as can be distributed, and so it's like one thing I'm really looking forward to post COVID is, like, as I've mentioned, I've been doing a lot of learning, but I feel like I've just been waiting until we can get back into actually talking with each other, like outdoors at a crag, because there's so many conversations and so many people I want to meet. I have this list of people that I just want to go out and go climb with, and just like talk with them and photograph them, and just like understand their perspective on the climbing community and life in general. And so the next like year of my life is I've kind of dedicated it to not really making a whole lot of stuff, but more kind of like trying to just figure out and field where my interests lie. Because right now, if you look at my previous climbing documenting history, it's all been kind of the same stuff, like people at the top of the industry doing very technical things, like Alex Honnold free soloing El Cap, Alex and Tommy doing the speed record on the nose, like all that kind of thing, and like a bunch of real rock films. And so I'm kind of like, I wouldn't say I'm burnt out on that stuff. That stuff still really interests me, but I'm also kind of willing to continue doing that while also creating a lot of time and space to be able to pivot and be working on stuff that's a little bit more close to me. Because I feel like I have the opportunity as someone that's, in this field as a queer person to seek out those individuals and tell their stories. And so I don't really have one person that I'm interested in doing that with. But I'm interested in getting to know people. And the way that I do that is not through Zoom or by like reading articles and books. It's like that stuff is all really good, but it's really, when I go to Yosemite and I just boulder with people that, previously weren't there. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
No, that does. Like I love that approach. Like that sounds like the best way is just like getting out there in the actual world and like actually climbing with them outside. That sounds amazing.
It's like when I get vaccinated,
really
it's like the cutting of the ribbon to like opening the doors to all the things I've kind of been stewing in my mind.
Yeah. No, that's great. Like, and I feel like the reason like those films, like, it's like dealing with, some of the higher, more professional level climbers, which has just generally been white men, is because like those are produced because they have, a following of people and networks, and people can stand behind these, it's just like the Hollywood star system essentially. Like they use actors to make these films because they know people will pay money to come and see them on the screen. So in the climbing community, it's kind of the similar thing. They're going to use these, professional climbers who are, white men to just like, sell the tickets basically. And so they see it as like a safe, financial risk essentially to produce that content. But if it was about, somebody else who was less known, they're not going to be as likely to actually, invest, their money and finance into such a project.
Definitely.
Sorry, that's just like the business side, and like my film head just went off when you said that. And it's just like, yeah, it's just like the similar type of system that goes on in Hollywood. So it all makes like, it all comes down to, the bottom line essentially still for filmmakers and getting investments to, make, films. It's not a affordable thing.
I think people are bored with films right now. Like if you think of Hollywood, people don't really like what Hollywood is producing. People like what Netflix is producing and Hulu, because they've like fully pivoted and they're not telling the same old story over and over again, written by the same people, featuring the same people. And I think we're seeing that reflected kind of everywhere. And right now climbing is going through that as well, where I don't think people really care that much about some of the top stars doing things that they could never do. Like I personally I can't insert myself into what Alex Honnold does as a climber. I think what he does is exceptionally interesting and cool, and it's really exciting to watch because he's pushing the limits of the sport. And same with like Adam Ondra and Tommy Caldwell. But at the same time, I'm like, well, that's like one type of story that you can tell, and it's very technical, and it's very just like kind of not. I don't want to say dry because I have a lot of respect for what people do at the upper end of our sport, but also there's just so many stories that exist within the climbing and the outdoor sphere that aren't being told because there's not like the technical appeal that people will respond to. And I think that's what you're talking about when you talk about the bottom line is like, I'm not sure if people are interested and if there's a huge market for just like random stories where the person happens to be a climber. I think that what I'm interested in is finding people that are good at climbing kind of enough. And I don't know where that line is, where like they're, I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit of elitism in there. And I don't like that aspect of like how if I make a film about someone, I kind of want them to have some sort of technical ability within climbing. And that's something that I'm curious to work through and explore when meeting new people is like, does this matter? Because I don't really think it matters to me. But like in the back of my head, as a filmmaker that does need to make a living, I'm like trying to figure out exactly where the story meets the climbing. Does that make sense? Because it is. I mean, ultimately, if you're going to make a climbing film, it has to feature some sort of climbing.
Yes, exactly. I know exactly what you're saying. Like it's trying to, tell an interesting story that hasn't been told, but also find the balance of, like a subject and stuff, and trying to find, where's the right balance for climbing, and, what kind of person you're going after to tell the story about. So yeah, it's a very like fine line and balance. So I can definitely understand trying to find a new approach
Yeah.
essentially. So yeah,
It's
it's
finding a new
challenging.
approach, but it's also finding a new character that the climbing industry hasn't
Yeah.
really seen before. Like someone who's like there's people that pop into my mind, and I kind of don't want to. I don't like pre-spraying at all.
Yeah.
Like
No,
I'm
I totally
surprised
understand
by
that.
myself that I even mentioned the idea of the queer outdoor film festival, because I'm like I literally came up with that a month ago and haven't really spent any time on it. But you know,
Yeah. We're gonna trademark that right here, right
yeah.
now. So that was Samuel Crossley's idea for this, queer outdoor climbing festival. So if anyone else does it, we know that they
I
stole
mean,
it
honestly,
from
if someone
you.
else wants to do it, like I will help you do it. Like
Yeah.
it's not something that I think that's probably why I ended up mentioning it, because I'm like, I don't take ownership of that. It's more just like, I want this to
Gotcha.
happen. Let's make it happen. It doesn't, I
Yeah.
don't want it to be
And
about
anything
me.
you can do.
It's just, I feel like I would be able to
Gotcha.
make it happen because of where I lie in the industry. But anyways, back to filmmaking. Yeah. There's like so many people that I have like a list of people that are queer and out, or just like not your traditional climber. And I want to, that's like what I was talking about with cutting the ribbon when I get vaccinated. It's just like, I want to go out into the world, meet these people, talk with them, and kind of see who I think would fit into making like a profile piece or something. Or maybe multiple people fit, and then I make a series of short profiles. Yeah,
Ooh.
that's the other
Series
idea that
are
I'm
always
currently
nice.
pre-spraying. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it because I kind of did a similar thing in the beginning of my transition. I started producing my own web series essentially, or just started shooting them basically, where I've like filmed two different trans folks, and it's like all by myself. So like I'm still kind of like in the editing stage of the first episode and like near completion, but I've just kind of been sitting on it now and just afraid to finish it, to put it out there, because I'm like, what if all of this work, was just really awful and it just comes out to be,
It's interesting you say that, because I feel the same on almost every creative pursuit that I do, where it's like, it's almost like it's a protection mechanism as a creative person.
Mm-hmm.
You're working on something, at least when I work on something, I spend a lot of time on it, and I input a lot of my own emotions into it, and like kind of like make these executive decisions based on how I feel. And when you're getting ready to post, even if it's just posting a photo or like, launching the film, I think it's a protection mechanism where you kind of don't want to finish it because you're scared of what people will think, right? And so at some point you kind of just have to let that go and trust that what you did is good enough, because it never will feel like it's good enough to you,
Yeah.
At least it never does to me. It's like you either run out of time or run out of money
so true.
when you're working on something.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, like, it's all like just stuff that I've done by myself. So it's like I don't have a producer or any deadlines to really hold me accountable is the problem.
I'll hold you accountable because I want to see it.
Really?
In the next month, okay. I want to watch it. How about that?
Okay. Okay, that sounds.
I bet people
like
listening
nice,
would also want to see it
accountability partner.
Too.
Yeah. Definitely. Okay. Thank you. It's good to know that I'm not the only one who feels that way about some, creative project basically. And I've talked about it before with some other people, and it's just like, it's just like I've kind of gotten down to the point where it's like, it's this mechanism that I use to protect myself, that like it's a fear of failure essentially. And like one thing climbing has taught me is that failure is like the best learning tool essentially. By just getting on the wall and trying, pushing myself on this route that I have never done before. Yeah, I'm going to fall like a lot, but I learned, that one instance I brought my foot up too high and then I didn't match my other foot, and I reached and I wasn't able to stay on the wall because I didn't have the right footing. So I'm trying to translate that to like the more artistic side of like filmmaking and photography as well. But it's just been challenging to take it across. And I guess it's because like in climbing, you're in the gym and you're surrounded by all these other people climbing as well, and they're, you know, doing the same thing you are. They're falling down and then getting back up
Mm-hmm.
on the wall. And I think the separation that I see is for like filmmaking and photography. It's that editing, you know, step of isolation, and you're by yourself. You're not surrounded by other people, you know, in an editing bay going through the same like emotions that you are. Like, how cool would that
Yeah.
be? um to just kind of see that. So I guess like I just need to like work on surrounding myself with more creative people to you know, kind of turn to for advice and opinions to see, you know, like, okay, is this, you know, am I on the right track here? Okay, perfect. This isn't working. I'll switch this around.
It's
'Cause
hard to be
yeah,
creative without validation.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
very good
I
point.
think that's one of the lines that kind of, for me, kind of defines the difference between creating content and creating like a film. Because like, where is that line, right? Because so many people make things on their own and they're so good. But there's definitely a line that you cross once you start collaborating with a lot of people. And so that's something that I've missed in COVID, is the collaboration of creative people. Because you
Yeah.
just like what you're saying, like editing alone on a computer in a room, you just don't have any perspective really. In the climbing gym, you do. Like people expect you to fall, and then like when you're skiing and you're on the chairlift and you see someone fall, you like give them a woohoo and a clap or something, and then they like woohoo back. You know, it's just like it's a totally different. So it's like failure is celebrated amongst people, but when you're alone in an editing room, you kind of have to make mistakes in order. That's how creativity works for me, at least. I try a bunch of stuff, and if it keeps on not working, then it's just like, oh, how many times can I go get tea, you know, in a day before I just end up realizing like this, I'm just alone on this computer. Yeah, but the other flip side of finishing a creative project is, as you near the end, it becomes less creative, at least for me, and it becomes more like refining it in a technical way so that it's palatable for the audience that you're targeting. And so it becomes more, it just becomes more work and less fun as you know, because you have to, all of a sudden you have to go through all the color or all the audio, and like that stuff can be fun, but it's also like you only have 2 weeks to do it or something. And so it's just like back to back, you watch the film 18 times between the different revisions, and it's like that's a lot of work. And you're
by the time that you've seen it at the end, you've seen it like 1,000 times, and you're watching it and you're like, this no longer has any meaning to me. Like, I've seen it so many times, I am so far removed from it. I have no way to actually distinguish.
It's not that it doesn't have any meaning. It's the meaning has become so minute. You know, it's like,
yes, that's
like in high
that's
school,
right.
I worked on a lot of musicals. Each year there was a really high production value musical. And so I would run the lights and the sound along with a bunch of other people. And so, well, actually I didn't run the lights. I helped out with the lights. This guy named Lyle did the light. Anyways, rabbit hole. The point is, I would run the sound, and, you know, I would know every beat of music, every entrance, every line that anyone says, because I need to pull up their microphone and then put it down. And like, there's this musical called Titanic, and there are 32 microphones. And it was just crazy because people would switch microphones because there's like 60 speaking roles or something. And so like, I would know everything so intimately. And that's how it feels when you're at the end of a film, is like everything has a different meaning. And it's hard to feel proud, at least for me, at the end of a creative project, because I just see all the things that I wasn't able to correct or fix, or something that I felt I could have done better, or something that went wrong during production that I wish didn't. That's kind of where the meaning lies for me. And I think that's healthy, because it then propels me to work on a next project and do better, right?
Yeah.
And so that like when I watch my film, I'm just like, I'm proud of it, but I'm also like, I can't wait to do better.
Yeah, that's so much well said. Well, way better said than what I was just saying. Yeah, like you just like summarized. I was using some bad language, some poor language choice there. But yeah, it's exactly like you said. Like it's funny too, because I grew up in the theater as well, and that's where I got my start for like creativity and everything. And I did lighting and everything else, like you said. So that's so funny. So yeah, you just like start on it and it's like this creative puzzle essentially. And then as you're getting to the end of it, it's like all about refining and fine tuning everything to get it as best as you can get it and then presenting it. And I just realized now we're on a climbing podcast and we're talking about filmmaking. So that's great.
That's
just
fine.
Because
As long as I feel like as long as it's interesting and specific, people can probably take something away from it and apply it to their own lives. That's what I found listening to podcasts. It's like people can talk about whatever, and as long as I hope we're doing a good enough job where people can relate in some way.
I think we will. Yeah. So yeah, I guess you kind of mentioned this earlier. So you really haven't faced like any like hardships.
I have.
Inside of the community.
But
they
just pale in comparison to like things that matter. I can speak a little bit to it. There's really only literally in the 10 years that I've been doing this, there's really only been 2 instances. One was like a very slight comment that just kind of stuck with me. And what happened was I was working with a photographer and they were shooting a subject, and I was looking at the subject's eyes because I was holding a light, and I was trying to get a really good shadow on from their nose. But I was also like looking at the catch light, and the subject kind of like made eye contact with me, and then mentioned it, and then the photographer like was like, honestly, I don't remember the comment, and this happens to me when I guess it's technically a traumatic experience. Doesn't like that seemed very heavily for what this was, but like I don't remember the specifics of a traumatic experience. I remember how I felt. And so I don't remember exactly what the photographer said, but ultimately it was just like it was because the subject was a male and they were shirtless that he thought that I was like ogling the subject, and I was just like, no, I understand I'm gay and this is a very good looking person, but like I'm looking at the lighting. And so I just remember that I didn't say anything, but like it was just one of those comments where I wish I remembered what they said, but anyways, that stuck with me, where it's just like because I was gay they assumed that I was ogling somebody, and I was just like, no. And so that was kind of annoying, and that's like that's the second most discriminatory thing I've experienced, which is like that is light duty.
Yeah, but it's still like it's anything that can be traumatic for you is a traumatic thing, and it's like I find myself doing the same thing a lot of the time as like making like comparing my trauma to somebody else's.
Oh, that's
like,
interesting. Yeah,
just because like your traumatic experience wasn't as like if you're comparing it as hard as somebody else's, like lessens the value, but it still made you feel uncomfortable and like you remember the way that you felt. And I think I have a lot of scenarios where I have similar things happen in my past and I don't remember the exact thing that they said, but I know how I felt, and it was I felt very uncomfortable or I felt very upset to have someone assume something about me just because I am trans. So for people to just like make these backhanded comments because of your sexuality is just it's very offensive, and it can just like create a lot of just like emotions in you that make you uncomfortable, and then it's just takes you out of what you're doing.
Yeah,
and
it
kind of makes
it just
you
made me
think,
feel
like,
different.
Yeah,
but I mean, it was like I don't think of it as traumatic. I just think of it as like, oh, it was like a light reminder that I am different, but everyone's different. Everyone has some sort of traumatic experience like that. I guess I wish I could think of a better way than traumatic, because that seems to kind of play it up a bit too much for me. But anyways, the other thing.
Well, it's just like any time that it's been like brought up that you're, queer or gay or whatever, like it's like something is basically just like pointed in your direction and kind of like, just.
It's interesting. I mean, even today when when I don't know the person rather well, or even if I do, when like the topic of me being gay comes up, I definitely get like a heightened state, physiologically. And I think it comes from the trauma of being in the closet, because I knew I was gay in 4th grade, and I didn't come out until the end of junior year of high school. So that's 10 years of knowing something about myself, not understanding it, hating that aspect of myself, wishing that I wasn't like that, finally experimenting with it, and then at some point being okay enough to tell somebody. And it's just like all those things are so like traumatic, of course. And so whenever the topic comes up that I'm gay, my body and my mind go into this kind of response where I'm just like, oh, I've got to field these questions, and I've got to own it and kind of exude the person that I want to be and the person that I feel like I am, but it's like very conflicted. So anytime any of those things pop up, that state is triggered. And so in this experience, it was like kind of negative. It was like that state was triggered and I was feeling bad about myself, even though I kind of shouldn't have in the moment. But anyways, yeah, the other experience was a little bit more direct homophobia. And I was, how do I tell the story? So I was working on Free as Can Be with Mark and Jordan, and they're like amazing when it comes to my sexuality. Like I didn't feel judged at all. It was really cool working with them, especially Mark. Mark was just like he's like a father figure in a way. You know, I spent so much time filming him and working with him and Jordan. But anyways, we were filming at Donner Summit, and Mark met this friend of his in the parking lot, and they were like kind of, you know, having I was gonna say having a chin wag. They were chatting, and Jordan, you know, popped into the conversation because the older fellow knew Jordan, and I was getting all of my camera gear out of the back of the car, and I was tying my shoes. And it's important to know that my laces are rainbow. Like I have rainbow laces because that's a thing.
Yeah.
In the LGBTQ, like athletic,
The pride swag.
it's especially popular, I think, in Britain and in Europe in their football or their soccer. People that want to support the LGBTQ athletes wear rainbow laces, and it's kind of this thing. So I wear rainbow laces. It's also a good way for people to know that I'm gay because people don't usually guess that I'm gay based on how I am. People expect gay people to be a certain way, and I don't fit that for them. So the rainbow laces help there. So I'm sitting there tying my rainbow laces, and I meet this guy, and I'm like, oh, it's nice to meet you. And he's like, oh, where are you from? I'm like, oh, I'm from San Francisco, but now I live in my van full time. And literally the second thing he says to me in response to that, after meeting me, was like, oh, well, I hope you didn't come out of there gay. I laugh at his face, and I say, I am gay. Look at my rainbow laces, dude. And he just can I swear on this podcast? He's like this old fat white dude, and he just fully stops in his tracks, gets his tail behind his legs, has no idea what to do in response to that, because like I said it with such like, you're a fucking idiot, that he didn't know what to do, and it felt amazing. And Jordan and Mark, I look over at Jordan and Mark, and they're kind of like trying to hold it together because they're like, holy shit, you just own this guy. And then he just you know, changes the subject and goes on, doesn't apologize, nothing. And then what's really kind of what made it a bigger experience was after the fact, I learned that he was the like director of some board. And one of the, like Mark told me, like one of the board members wanted to chat with me about this incident, and my thoughts about it. And so I talked to like 2 board members about this, and ultimately what ended up happening was some people left the board, and I think he had to step down or step away from the board or something. But that was kind of like another experience where I was just like, okay, so this thing happened, but then also it led to like, I have to do the work emotionally to talk on the phone with these people about this situation, and they have to make an informed decision based on it. So it's just like, oh my gosh, so this like has blown up out of proportion, but also it's like, it's for the right reasons, where like people are like, okay, well, if this guy's like openly homophobic to climbers and he's in charge of a climbing board, he can't do that. And what sucks was his response. He's like, oh, I don't necessarily, I remember he left me a voicemail because I had no interest in talking with this guy. Because he showed his true colors upon meeting me, you know, terrible first impression. yeah, it was like it just reminded me of all the bullshit old boys club kind of stuff that like, still exists today.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, he left a voicemail. He's like, I don't quite remember, saying anything, but if I did, I apologize. I'm not that type of person. I'm just like, you are so full of shit. I cannot believe you. Like Mark, Jordan, and I were all there and recount the experience, and like we know you said what you said, and he didn't own up to it, didn't apologize. It was just like a classic, you know, white guy response.
Yeah, typical
Like,
like cishet
just
white
don't
guy
get it.
who's just like, oh, I'm not like homophobic.
I just
Like,
make fun of gay
I'm
people
not.
with
Yeah,
straight people.
I just make fun of gay people like when I'm with the straight people. But if I'm around other queer people who are visibly queer, and like really flamboyant, then I'm not gonna like
That's
I'm not
the
gonna say
shit
anything.
that like
I'll wait till I'm back in the my house with my straight friends, and then I'll make fun of them. So no, I'm not homophobic out loud to y'all.
that's
Just no, like, ugh, that's so annoying. But I'm so glad the way that you handled it though was just like just the best way that you could, basically, after like getting such a like awful question presented to you. And yeah, but you said something right before you got into that about how you were triggered by the first instance to that feeling of being in the closet for 10 years. And I think it's very interesting because I think it happens with a lot of people who are queer that have been in the closet, is that there's this like underlying shame that I felt about myself for so long, that anytime I'm put in a situation that's stressful, that like calls out on like me being trans or queer, it's like you kind of revert back to that state basically, and you feel this sense of fear or shame or whatever it is you felt while you were closeted. And it's just so interesting how like you just expressed the kind of a similar thing for you. And I'm curious because I know for me, I grew up in very rural East Texas, where it was, not good to be anything but, straight, essentially.
Yep.
And I knew from a very young age that I was different, and I didn't really know the word trans or transgender and what that was growing up. I had no way of knowing who I was and how I identified, because there was no education about it. Like everyone who was queer or trans or whatever was just made to be this other thing that was very, very bad and wrong.
Yeah.
So I had this whole thing growing up until back in 2017, at the end of 2017, 2018, when I was able to finally come out. So for like 20 something years of having this, mentality of I've had to dismantle a lot of internalized transphobia and homophobia. And it's not something I can ever, I think, be finished with, because it was for such a long portion of my life.
Yeah, no, I definitely relate as well. I mean, the internalized homophobia, you're taught to hate yourself, like people glorify everything that you're not. It wasn't super helpful for me because, what am I talking about? I didn't have anyone that I felt was gay that I could relate to when I was growing up. Like my dad worked at an office in San Francisco, and two people were gay, and one of them was very flamboyant, and my dad would openly make fun of the flamboyant guy, and my two older brothers would laugh along with it, and I'm like, that's like somebody that I kind of see myself in, and I don't like that, it's something to be made fun of. But then there's like other experiences where, they accepted gay people, and so it's just like this weird kind of like gaslighting of like, I feel like people accept gay people because they're supposed to, like they don't want to be seen as bullies or homophobic, but then also like we're the butt of jokes and stuff. And so it was interesting because I didn't have anyone that I felt like was me growing up to look up to, especially like in the outdoor or sport industry. I felt like if I wanted to do sports, I was supposed to go into ballet or something. Like something. And so it was interesting because like think it was in 2008. There's this diver named Matthew Mitchum, and he's from Australia, and he won a gold medal at the Olympics, and he was the first openly gay person to do so. And so I looked up to him. I was like, that guy is doing something really cool, and he's open about it. And he was just like, do you know Adam Rippon?
Can't say that I do, but the name sounds vaguely
Yeah, it was just
familiar.
like the same sort of thing with Adam Rippon, who's a figure skater, who's just like very much just like, this is who I am. I'm going to be myself, and I will take you down if you make fun of me for like being who I am, you know? And it's just like, it's a cool thing to look up to. And before then I hadn't really had that. And then, another Olympic person, Tom Daley, he came out after the fact, after winning medals and stuff. And it's just like, it begged the question to me, it's like, well, why are people coming out so late? You know, like, why can't you just come out early, achieve your goals, and be who you are? It seemed like that wasn't possible still, except for like a few people. And like, if you apply that to today, where like we still have a little bit of internalized homophobia because when we grew up, there wasn't anybody like us and we weren't supposed to be who we are. If you apply that to today in the climbing industry, there's still nobody that I feel I could look up to really in the climbing industry. There are a few people that are definitely out at the top of, you know, like Madeline Sorkin and Alex Johnson. And like those people are super cool, and I relate to their experiences, but also I feel like it's like not enough for me, and I don't feel great saying that, but like, you know, there's no like openly gay dude that's like sending the nar, and I'm like, why doesn't that exist? Like that should, if you just look at the numbers in terms of like the population of how like the percentage of LGBTQ people, why is it so not represented in the upper end of climbing? And I don't know the answers to those questions, but they sit there in my mind, and like that's part of internalized homophobia that still exists in my mind today. It's just like, well, why aren't people like me up there with people like them?
Yeah. That's a really good point.
So yeah, you're right when you're saying that we're never really done. It's like,
Yeah.
I just want someone to look like me and be like me, but also not just me, all the other people that are underrepresented in climbing. You know, there's nobody that represents them. And I'm just like, okay, that's annoying. We got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. It is annoying, and it's a similar thing. I actually had not having like someone to look up to like on a professional level as like a trans woman who climbs, but like I said, I started climbing a little over 2 years ago. And I've been climbing in the gyms basically here in Dallas at my gym summit. And I have met basically up until just, I would say, I think it was in end of February. So 2 years into climbing at the gym, and I finally met another trans woman climbing. Like I went 2 years and never met another trans girl climbing. And it was like I met lots of non-binary individuals, and I met lots of other trans men who climbed, and like have had some amazing friendships with other trans climbers. But I finally met another trans woman climbing, and it was just such a great experience to finally like see someone like me in the gym climbing. There's something so kind of freeing and like relaxing about it, I guess, that I was just really glad to like now have that person in the gym who's like me that I can climb with, you know. And
yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, it seems like what you're describing is like you don't have to go into that internalized homophobia, kind of like that psychological state, where it's like, oh, I'm talking about this with people who might not understand or I might feel judged by. If you see someone like you and you can climb with them, that is why you feel relaxed, right? I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because I got invited to climb by some queer friends. They weren't trans, but they're still like really good queer friends of mine. So like that's the whole reason I got into climbing, because you know they showed me that climbing was also a very queer sport, and introduced me in that way. But yeah, still in the back of my head, I had that like, well, if it's a really queer sport, I haven't seen any other trans women climbing yet. And like I've invited, like the last couple of years, I've invited so many friends to come climbing with me, and I'm just trying to get that at least one person to be as excited about it as I was that first time to like want to, you know, join the gym. So it's nice that I finally like found someone else like me that I can climb with more often. Um, so yeah, I it's good to know that there's other similarities like between us, and I've talked to a few other people about it. So that's good to know. I mean, it's not good, but like it's yeah, shows the similarities as human beings and what we go through as, you know, queer folks. So I guess I have a couple more things, but kind of just going now to you, Samuel Crossley, as, you know, filmmaker, photographer. So what got you into, you know, filmmaking and photography?
Sure. So I kind of have always been into filmmaking and photography. I think like in fourth grade, my dad got one of those, you know, big black DSLRs with the interchangeable lenses, and like it was a digital camera, it wasn't a film camera. And so this was like this really cool piece of equipment that was like, it just enticed me. And so I started using it, and he taught me how to use it in manual mode, which was extremely frustrating. But now I thank him for that, because I was shooting in manual, he was like, this is like an expensive camera. You're not going to use it in auto mode. Like, why would you do, you know? I was like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And so I learned how to use a camera in fourth grade at the professional level, like not taking professional images, of course, but I knew how it worked. And I really was intrigued by kind of like the trial and error of figuring out how it worked. I thought that was really cool. And then also, like, once I got past all the technical stuff, which I thought was interesting, then I could kind of use it to create something that was already in my head. So like I would see this beautiful flower, and I'd want to capture it in like this beautiful way. And so one of the first photos that I was proud of was just of this flower that had all of its petals, and it was kind of perfect in the midst of a, you know, a green field. It was a purple flower in like a green field, and there were other purple flowers, but they had petals missing. And so I just put it right in the center. And I just remember that being a really cool photo, and that, you know, I put it on my computer desktop. And so that was the start of photography for me. And then in junior high, I took photos, and I would enter into photo contests, and I would win. And so I got the validation that not only did I like it, but I was good at it. At the same time, I was making stupid videos with friends, you know, as you do when you're bored before the internet. As a kid, you're like, let's make an infomercial or something. And so I would do that. And then in high school, we had this amazing video production program, 4 years worth. And so I did that. I also jumped into AP photography magically. The last year, there were supposed to be 3 prerequisite classes. But I submitted my portfolio and got into the AP class. So I got to learn as much as I could about photography in the last year of high school. At the same time, I was working in musical theater, which is all lights and sound. And so like these 3 different disciplines allowed me to kind of pick from one of them for a professional course. And so when I applied to schools for college, I applied to film school because I figured I could actually do that and make a living. And so then, of course, in film school, I found climbing. And if I'm a climber who's also a filmmaker and photographer, you got to shoot climbing. It's like, you know, it's just like such an obvious thing to do as a photographer. You go to these beautiful places that you hike to get to. So you feel like you're kind of experiencing something unique. And then once you get on the wall, you even feel more unique in terms of the perspective you're experiencing. And so capturing these unique perspectives and beautiful places of a climber, which is doing, you know, someone doing something athletic, also unique, but also like kind of balletic and beautiful. Like there's a beauty to the movement of climbing that I love to capture. And so I was just drawn to shooting climbing after, like, you know, getting into photo and video for most of my life. And so that's kind of how it brought me to where I am today. In college, I found climbing, and I would just photograph it. And then that summer, after freshman year, I loved photographing climbing, and I wanted to work on climbing films. And so I cold emailed Cedar Wright, because I knew that he was planning a trip in California, and I was in California. So I was like, I'm a film student. I want to work for you for free. I want to make your film with you. Please respond. I don't know exactly how I wrote it, but it was pretty much that. And I crafted this email like for a week, and then he responded like in an hour after I sent it. I was like, oh my gosh. And he responded like, yeah, let's jump on a call tomorrow. And so like I sent the email, and the next day I was talking with Cedar Wright, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is unreal. And so I pretty much, because I didn't have a summer internship, I created my own internship with Cedar Wright, and he took me under his wing, and he like fully just trusted me in many ways that I thought was really cool. And we worked together to make Sufferfest 1, where I brought a little bit more of my filmmaking experience, and we crafted this film. And that did really well. And then the next summer, he invited me to work on the next trip, which was Sufferfest 2. And that ended up being picked up by, I think, National Geographic picked it up somehow. I'm not sure exactly what that looked like because I wasn't involved in that kind of distribution. But because of that, I then the next summer got to work for Real Rock in Boulder, Colorado. And so I shot Boys on the Bugs, and I edited a bunch, and I shot a bunch of interviews with people, and I kind of learned how to make a climbing film. And then the next year I worked for them again, not in an internship role, but as a salaried position, which I realized didn't work for me. At the same time, when I graduated college, I'd worked with Alex a whole bunch, and he called me to tell me that Jimmy Chin was going to call me. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, we got a project coming up. I recommended you, so just expect a call from Jimmy. I'm just giving you a heads up. I'm like, okay. Holy shit, like Jimmy Chin. Like, holy, wow. And this is like a month before graduating college. And I have this job lined up with Tender Films that I was stoked on, but also like kind of like I'd never actually worked a full-time job, like 9 to 5 at a desk. Mm-hmm. And I was worried that I wasn't going to work because everything else had been freelance up until then. But I really liked climbing. And so Jimmy called me and he's like, hey, Alex recommends you as a climbing photographer and filmmaker. And I've got a project coming up with Alex that I'm looking for a photography assistant on. Would you be willing to, assist me? We're also looking for the film, someone to help shoot and also handle some of the random production tasks like data wrangling. And so I signed on to what was, Free Solo, which at the time was Untitled Free Solo Project or something like that. And so that was amazing. but the catch was that I had to start working with Jimmy before I graduated. And so I talked to my professors and they were all like, of course, like just do all of your work beforehand. And then one professor was like, all the other professors are asking you to do your work beforehand. So why don't you just do the work for my class afterwards? Because nice. It was a month-long shoot in Yosemite. So that was nice. So I did a bunch of work to graduate essentially early and then did one class's worth of follow-up work. So yeah, that was how I got on to Free Solo, was, working in the industry and knowing Alex, and Alex recommended me. Because Alex, I think, played a huge role in the crew selection of that film, because we were going to be working with him so intimately. He needed to trust the people. And so I already had that mutual trust with him. We knew how to work together. I had shot him soloing before, not on El Cap, but, and so that's kind of the whole back end of, everything before Free Solo.
Wow. That's crazy. You did all that before you got out of college, before you graduated. That's what just blew my mind. I didn't realize the timeline of it all.
Yeah. I liked it, so I just kept on doing it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's so crazy. And it's funny, you were telling me about the email and stuff that you sent to
Cedar
what
Wright.
Was his name again? Cedar Wright. Yeah, I had a very similar feeling to what you just described whenever I was typing up this email to you essentially to reach out to you about just being on this podcast. So that's just so funny, because it was I sent you an email and you got back to me in within an hour, I think. And I was just this is amazing. He actually responded to me. So yeah, I'm just drawing parallels now in my head and just this is so funny.
It's exciting.
It is very exciting. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you reached out to me. It was very easy to respond.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad. So yeah, I just want to try to start bringing it in by just going through some other things. So what are some recent projects that you've worked on? I'm used to Free as Can Be. What was that like?
Yeah, free as can be was so I mean like when I graduated college, I essentially saw the next 4 years as like I wanted to continue to learn and work with other people and just kind of be a sponge. But at the same time, if the opportunity arose, I'd want to kind of like take an opportunity if it did. And so before Free as Can Be, which is my second film, I made a film called Far Away, which is for the American Alpine Club. They wanted a commercial, actually, for their Live Your Dream grant. I was like, everybody hates commercials. Like, no one wants that. And so I pitched them on just like creating enough funding to send me out on one of the Live Your Dream grantees, like one of their trips. And I would just document one of the grantees' trips and make a film about it. And then they could use that film to promote the Live Your Dream grant. And so that was the first film I directed. It was Far Away, and documented Kat Whipple and Jenny Lemon Pie. I actually don't know Jenny's last name. Oh, no, I do. Jenny Fisher. And they went to China to do off-width first ascents in a place called Liming. So it's this really cool opportunity to go to China and document these two female climbers doing off-width climbing, which I thought was really fun. So we made a film, and my friend and filmmaking partner, Mary Jeans, we edited it. And so she kind of made that film kind of what it is. Like I shoot a lot of footage and I have a story in my mind, and then I bring it to Mary and we work together to make that story come to life. And so that was the first film. And then Free as Can Be came up because I worked with Jordan on Free Solo. I was getting shots of El Cap. I was getting background plates for 3D textures for like the animations. So they needed the wall. And so I took Jimmy's like humongous medium format camera up across the wall from El Cap is Middle Cathedral. And so Jordan and I climbed Middle Cathedral about halfway up, and then I shot with a medium format camera a bunch of photos of El Cap to then stitch together into one mega photograph so they could use that as the background plate. So that's how I met Jordan, and he was like really good at climbing, and he was also like really motivated to keep climbing. And so we just kept on running into each other in the same places, and we became friends. And then he ended up meeting this guy named Mark Hudon. And so when he met Mark, I photographed him and Mark climbing together. And then when I learned that they wanted to climb routes on El Capitan, I was like, this is kind of an opportunity to make a film, because I think that you guys are both really cool characters. The dynamic of your partnership is really fun and interesting and cute. And also you have like these goals in El Capitan. And so I pitched it with Ted Hesser to Arc'teryx, and we got funding. And then we ended up filming in Yosemite, and then various other places I shot beforehand, like in like Tahoe. And that's kind of how Free as Can Be came about. And then we edited it, of course, and made a movie.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That took a long time to edit.
Yeah, anytime you're doing documentary, it's like there's so much footage.
It's like three different stories whenever I make a documentary. There's the story you think you're going to get. There's the story you end up getting when you film it. And then there's the story you end up creating a bit in post. Where it's just like you use what you can, and then you use the magic in post.
Yes. The magic of editing. Yeah. I was very, very fortunate to like right out of college, like the first kind of like gig that I got to assist on this documentary following two plastic surgeons from the Dallas area to Peru, to like, you know, the middle of the Andes Mountains, to go operate on kids with like cleft palates, cleft lips. So I was, 18, or not 18, it was 20, like 21, fresh out of college. And the filmmaker reached out to me because I PA'd on his film the summer before, and seeing if I was interested to assist for him. I was like, yeah, this sounds amazing. So I was very fortunate to like have that opportunity to go to Peru straight out of college and see how other people in the world, not in a first class like nation, like living, and it was a very humbling experience. It made me very grateful for what I had back home. and just also kind of opened up how people can live more like more simplistic than in the US. So it was very eye-opening, amazing experience. And I actually like, it was funny because like I was hired to help assist. And then like after like a year of like going back doing other like freelance gigs, trying to make it out of college in a smaller market as Dallas, the filmmaker started contracting with me more, and I started editing for him. And then I actually started like putting together, like organizing all of that footage from the shoot and then trying to put together a rough cut for him essentially. So yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, you have the idea of what you wanted to shoot and then what you shot and then in the edit. So yeah, documentaries are so daunting just on the post site because there's so much footage that you have to choose.
There's a lot of footage to watch through, but there's also, once you watch it, you kind of can like discount it. And you, like, as I watch a bunch of footage, you take away the key moments and write them down and kind of pull them up in the sequence. And so it is a lot of footage, but as long as you got a good workflow. But
yeah, it's all about the workflow.
Traveling to third world countries and just any other country in general, just I feel like makes life easier because you realize how different life can be elsewhere, and so you just tend to shift your focus and your priorities on things that you realize matter more and less on things that don't. And so I love working in other countries, just other areas. Even within the United States, there's a lot of stuff that you be exposed to that you didn't expect.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to that. Once I can get my vaccine and be able to start traveling more for work would be awesome. Yeah, last kind of thing is like, what's been like the most rewarding like project for you? Okay, no, wait, what's like the most, like we can do two things. Yeah, like what's like the most rewarding thing for you recently? It sounds like
skiing was probably the most rewarding for sure, just because it was like an activity. I mean, like part of it is that it was an expensive thing to get into. Like I got a season pass, which was like $750, and so I try to ski as often as I can. But it's just such a nice thing because what happens is if I go with someone, we both get tested, and then we can drive up into the mountains together, and you spend a whole day with one other person or two other people, and it's nice because I love the flow state of skiing, either turns or just being in the trees or hiking somewhere and then getting what they call fresh pow, and then just like being able to sit on a chairlift and talk with people is really nice. And so moving to Boulder, because of COVID, little background there, my boyfriend lived in New York and I lived in essentially the Bay Area because that's where my family's based. And so when I wasn't working and I wasn't having like fun traveling or something, I would kind of, visit my family there and stay at my mom's house in her driveway for a bit and then go off to my next destination. So we both met here in Colorado to kind of form a life here. And so skiing is kind of like this really fun activity that hasn't quite replaced climbing, but if you haven't tried skiing, I highly recommend it. It's very fun.
Yeah. No, I did it once when I was a kid. Like my dad took my brothers and I to Colorado. And my brothers were all about snowboarding. So like our cousin came with us because she knew how to snowboard and she was essentially going to train us how to do it. And I, rented the gear or whatever, and she was taking us up on the bunny slope, trying to teach us how to turn and stop and everything. And I just remember the first time I went down the bunny slope, I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to turn. All I could do was just go straight, and I kept on going. And essentially, I saw the snow about to run out and go into a parking lot. So I just completely, I just fell to stop myself, and just basically just ate it really hard. And it just basically my knee was a little sore after that. So I just kind of sat out the rest of the day and decided to switch to skis the next day. And I could ski a lot better than I could snowboard. And yeah, actually I love skiing. It was so much fun. It's such a great activity to do as a kid that I haven't had the ability or anyone really inviting me to go skiing or anything. So that sounds like a fun, nice fun pastime, something to enjoy doing and spending. It kind of gives me the same kind of social aspect that I get from climbing, which I'm surprised I actually haven't brought up this whole time. is like I haven't talked about how amazing climbing is for its social reasons, whereas like every other sport that I've, I wasn't really a big sports person, but all the other sports basically growing up, there was never like any social interaction in it. But with climbing, there's this nice kind of social interaction that you get, because when you're not on the wall, you're just like sitting there talking about climbing or talking about life. And it sounds like it's a very similar thing for skiing, where you're able to like have, really good conversations with people.
Definitely.
So that definitely makes me want to like get back out there and try
also
skiing one day, whatever.
The other thing about skiing is just like you're in such a beautiful place. Like sometimes I'll go skiing with Mary, the editor that I talked about earlier. Mary and I sometimes we'll just like go in the trees and then we'll just stop and we'll just sit down and look up and talk. And we're just like in the middle of like a mountain and it's snowing and like it's just such a beautiful, unique place to be able to access. And so it's nice to take that all in. The other thing is my boyfriend Brian started skiing. And so it's been really fun to both teach him, have other people teach him and see him improve and like see, someone progress through the different like exciting aspects of skiing, like learning how to stop and finally being comfortable and then like going to blue runs and then learning how to go like actually turn and like slow down as you turn, and just like seeing all that is really fun. And like now he's at the point where he can ski black diamonds in the trees and stuff, and I'm just like, this is amazing. Like he learns so fast, and now I get to hang out with him and
wow.
We can't really climb all that much in the winter because it's really cold here. People do it, but that's kind of gnarly and the gyms are off limits. So skiing was my kind of my project. The other thing that I haven't really touched on at all was after Free as Can Be, which released in August, I immediately started working on something called Crux Academy, which is basically masterclass for the outdoors. And that was really fun because I worked with this guy named Jeremy Jensen, who is part of Outwild. Are you familiar with Outwild? Sonny McCandless and Courtney.
I can't say that I am.
So
no, but I definitely want to look into it now.
I mean, you can just look it up, Outwild. Super cool. But Jeremy's from Outwild, and he kind of got that up and running. And so now he has this new baby called Crux Academy. And so I got to work on like 4 lessons. And that was super fun. And I got to pitch one of the lessons that I thought people would be into. And that was with Len Nessifer, who teaches public lands and indigenous topics. And so that was like, it was amazing because I was making money doing something that I got to learn about something in the process. And it felt really rewarding, and everyone liked the course, and like, it was just like it's really fun. There's other courses too, like backcountry skiing and stuff. So check out Crux Academy. Gotta do a shameless plug.
Yeah. I'm sure like everything else that we mentioned so far, I will go through and make sure that these links get posted in the episode whenever this gets released. So yes, no shameless plugs, all necessary plugs in my opinion.
And it's better than the other academy. There's another academy out in the outdoor industry, and I've watched some of the lessons, and the people that teach them are really cool. But I think that with Crux Academy, there's a lot more to the lessons that you'll get more out of. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and then like I guess kind of like, because this question kind of turned into 2 questions, but what were you passionate about? Like, what's the most like rewarding, like I guess, experience you've had in your work as a filmmaker and photographer? Slash, what was the most rewarding, and what's been like the hardest thing for you to do?
I mean, I think it's just Free Solo as a whole was definitely the most hard and also most rewarding. Like when we were in Morocco is like a snippet of the film. It's like, I think it's like 2 minutes or something. They use it to essentially introduce Tommy Caldwell. I think there's other reasons why it's there, but we spent 3 weeks filming, and like we were essentially filming like 6 out of 7 days.
Yep.
And it was like big mountains. The reason why Alex went to Morocco is because it's the same latitude as Yosemite. And it's like huge walls that are about the same size as Yosemite. And so what's really neat about it is its season in Morocco comes just before the Yosemite season. And so it's an amazing training ground for Alex. It's also an amazing playground for us as filmmakers, but it's also essentially like learning how to shoot in Yosemite again, only in a in a different place that has like not a lot of amenities. And so while we were in Morocco, I was the data wrangler. I was a PA. I was a camera person. I was Jimmy's photo assistant. So I was like constantly wearing so many hats that my head was constantly sweating. I was like the first person to wake up because I had to prep like all the camera cards into people's cameras and stuff. And I was just like, I felt like if I wasn't available for people, I wasn't doing my job. That's kind of what it felt like. And so I was also the last one to go to bed because I was the data wrangler, which means, we were shooting on cinema cameras. There's a lot of data.
I'm curious. The camera nerd in me has to ask what cameras y'all shot on.
Most of the cameras were C300 Mark IIs made by Canon.
Okay.
And they were rolling in 4K in like all the good settings, so a lot of data. And then Claire Popkin,
giant files.
Claire Popkin was essentially the Verite DP of Free Solo, and he was shooting on an Alexa Mini, and so his camera files were even bigger than the C300 Mark II. It was not rare for him to shoot a terabyte a day. And the thing about working on Free Solo in Morocco is everyone's in their camera positions, and there's not like a camera cart, on top of the mountain. And so
you can't just have a cart on top of the mountain and you're not just like plugged into
so what
a
happens
Ginny,
when like
just
Jimmy
like chilling in your chair.
I'm not just chilling and like taking people's cards as they exhaust them. No, what happens is like Jimmy
also
is shooting, Mikey is shooting, Shane's shooting, Claire's shooting, I'm shooting, and then we all go back to the village, and I take everyone's cards at the same time, and all of a sudden I have to get them all dumped onto a hard drive system, and then I get to go to bed. And so it was not rare for me to go to bed at like 2 a.m. and then wake up at 6.
Yeah.
And what's really sucked about that wasn't necessarily like the long hours and the workload, and like it was really hot, it was really sunny. I mean, a classic just big mountain days too, you can't discount the like having to hike 3,000 feet. And like they also did a link up, which meant that we were like filming for 24 hours through the night or something. It was terrible. But the other thing is I got terribly sick. I got food poisoning, and like I was trying to do my job to the best of my ability while like feeling the worst I ever had. Like the worst I ever had. Like I don't really get hurt. I haven't broken any bones or anything, and I don't really get sick, but I got really sick. And I think it's because I ate a tomato or something. But it was bad. And so luckily, like after like 2 or 3 days of just feeling like a piece of shit that was not functional, but I still had to be, Jimmy pulled out a stop, and he was like, hey, like I got this thing. It's called a Z-Pack. It's like for me, but like I'm gonna give it to you because you need it. But like I was like, oh my gosh, like Jimmy Chin like is so much more important in this production than I am. And like if he gives me his Z-Pack and I get better, and then if he gets sick and he can't get better,
we're in trouble.
That's bad. And so that was like, then I was like, I was so willing to take the Z-Pack because I felt so bad. But at the same
for 4 days, like that's a long time.
At the same time, I felt like
poisoning.
I was like I made a mistake, for getting sick or something. So it was like it was emotionally hard to be on that film because the expectations were so high, and I was wearing so many hats, and I just came out of film school. Like I had a lot of experience for someone my age, but at the same time, like it's a lot of stuff to do. PA, assistant.
Yeah, that sounds like nowhere close to like anything you were like on that caliber. But I did like a film, like a small indie film with like one of my old film professors from school, and it was just like he was directing it, and he had the whole thing kind of storyboard on like index cards with just like story bites, and he had a DP and then 2 sound people, and then I was like super PA essentially, where I was ACing and doing PA things, and then just like everything else that we needed to do, making runs or whatever else, and then media managing as well and dumping all the footage and everything else, wearing all those hats.
Very typical.
Yeah, I know. But on a such smaller scale than y'all are on though, so it's just like I know what it feels to like be wearing multiple hats and trying to make sure you're available for everyone.
But it's also, when you do that stuff,
Stressful.
it's stressful, it's hard work, but also on the flip side, it's so rewarding, and then it leads to opportunities. And, I was like, because I'd worked on the film and tried so hard to be the best, helper that I could. Unfortunately, right before we were supposed to film another season in Yosemite, Mikey Schaefer, the climbing DP of Free Solo, essentially, I think he was skiing and did something with his ankle or something. Pretty much, he instead of being on the wall, he then had to run the long lens, which is normally what I was doing, being on the 50 to 1,000. And so we swapped, and then I was trusted enough to shoot the actual free solo climb on the wall. I had shot on the wall before in the project, but they're like pretty small positions. And so I was one of the 3 people to shoot Alex on the wall. And that's like, that's one of the most rewarding things ever, like I documented history. And I felt like I had fun and did a good job doing it. So like, what's more rewarding than that? Of course, then there's the flip side of like, okay, I've peaked, it's all downhill from here.
Well, no, then it's just like, what can I do now? Like what's gonna like make me feel as accomplished as I did here, like working towards something. Yeah, that's amazing. That's really cool. I didn't realize the scope of that and everything else, like you being right out of finishing school. So it's amazing. And also curious, because I was also a fellow film student. What film school did you
I went to San Francisco State University. Very, very proud of that school. Yeah.
Nice.
They're cool because they're like the most diverse cinema school in existence, I think. They're like one of the top diverse schools in general, and then within cinema, they're the most diverse. I was super psyched to go there because I didn't want to go to LA. So living in San Francisco was amazing. Yeah, good stuff. They have so many good programs. Also, the professors are so good too. It's like a public university, a state university. It's a lot of good stuff came from there. Very, very happy.
Perfect. All right, and I guess I'll let you. Is there anything else that I haven't really asked about or talked about that you wanted to kind of talk on before we close things out?
Not really. I've kind of had to use the restroom for about an hour now. So.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
I don't think there is anything else. I like meditating, trying to think if anything pops up. Yeah, no, we covered so much. I mean, I could continue talking with you all day, but so
I want to let you go to the bathroom there for sure and get back to your life. And I just want to say thank you so much again, Sam, for joining me and having this conversation with me. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope that maybe one day we get to climb together. That would be amazing.
Yeah, we should make that happen post vaccine.
Yes, post vaccine.
Thanks for reaching out.
I love that idea.
Writing that email and allowing me to respond. I feel honored to be able to, be a part of this small group of climbers that can talk about stuff like this. Nice.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm really grateful too. Well, thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate it, and it's been an absolute pleasure to get to pick your brain about all the things that I wanted to know about.
For sure.
So it's been really great. And yeah, I look forward to chatting in the future.
Indeed.
Sometime.
Yeah, talk soon. Bye, Alexa.
Bye. All right, bye. All right.
And that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. I am so excited to be sharing these episodes with you all finally. And if, something that Sam and I talked about on today's episode resonated with you, please pause the episode right now and be sure to go leave a comment on the platform that you're listening to us on. That does so much for us and the podcast to grow and reach more people. And that's what we really want this podcast to do, is to be able to help reach out to any queer climbers out there who don't feel like they're being seen or they're being heard, that there's like no one else like them in their community. Because I know in places in the US there are there's a queer climber who doesn't feel like there's people like them, and that's who this is for. So please, like I said, leave a comment, go like, follow, subscribe on the socials for Sins and Suffers, and yeah, feel free to follow Mario, myself, or Sam. All of our social handles will be in the description below, along with Sam's website or anything else that we mentioned in the show today. And yeah, have a great rest of your day, and thanks for listening.
Structure audio.